Okay, well, welcome, Laura. Thanks for joining us for our latest edition of these VINEX chats with key wine figures from around the world. So very pleased to have you on board. It's obviously
Thank
Laura
you.
Catena from Catena in Argentina, but you're not actually in Argentina, are you, at the moment? You're in San Francisco.
No, yes, I actually am in Monterey, California.
I beg your pardon. All right, well, very nice too. So is that where you
Yeah.
are for the lockdown then, obviously?
Yes, I had just come back to the US after being at the beginning of harvest, and I
Yeah,
was on my way to Pro Wine,
of
and
course.
then I was going back after Pro Wine to Argentina, and then all that got canceled. But we did get an early harvest by about a month. It was a
Wow.
strange season, very dry weather. The wines
Yeah.
are very good, low yields, but very good. But fortunately, because
Yeah.
it would have been very hard to finish the harvest, like we usually do in early May. We finished basically in
Yeah.
early April. Um, nature sort of shined upon
Okay.
us a little bit.
So how about Argentina overall? Do you know the situation overall? Is that quite typical across the country?
In terms of the harvest being
The
early,
harvest, yeah,
yes,
getting, yeah,
yes, yes. The harvest was early in most regions because the weather was overall was like a little warmer in the winter, so everything got advanced, and then there were some frosts. Uh, Mostly the main thing was that it was very dry, and that was
yeah,
everywhere. So the yields were just really low, and so everything ripened earlier.
good. So in terms of what impact the virus has had in Argentina, I mean, what can you just talk us through in terms of how it's
Yes.
played out and when it really hit, and what kind of
Yeah.
restrictions have been put in place?
Yes. So the Argentine government reacted extremely early. So the lockdown, and it's a serious lockdown. It's like in Italy, you need a permit to leave your house.
Okay.
You can't even walk your dog if you have a backyard. So, it, yes,
Right.
and
Okay.
and the neighbors report neighbors.
Yeah.
It's actually sort of uh, fanatical in some ways.
Yeah.
So the lockdown was placed when there were not even less than 100 cases.
Okay.
So
What was that? Was that in which month was
so
that?
that was in 20th of March.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
and we closed the winery a few days earlier because first of all, it looked like the country was going to close down anyhow, and my main concern was that I had all my production people working at the harvest, and the winery receives a lot of tourists from all over the world, and it didn't seem like the right kind of mix of people working in the harvest with tourists coming from all over the world.
Okay.
So the country, the government closed very early, very strict.
Okay.
For sure earlier than they closed in pretty much anywhere in Europe or in North America.
Okay.
And the main reason I think for that was that there's a lot of communication between Argentina and Italy because 70% of Argentines have some kind of Italian descent. So
Yeah.
everybody in Argentina has family in Italy, and I think they got a lot of advice from the Italians, and they said, close early if you can.
And actually,
So yeah, and that's what they did. So we were able, as an essential industry, wine is considered food in Argentina, which I think it should be. And so we were able to continue harvesting, but we were also very extreme in our measures.
yeah.
We are doing extreme social distancing. Normally in Argentina, everybody gets together for lunch. You sit very close to each other. We provide a warm lunch, and we're still providing a warm lunch, but fortunately it's summer, so people can sit outside.
Yeah.
So you have one person sitting here, another person
Yeah.
2 meters away. Everybody takes over their tree. Everybody's under one tree.
Fair enough.
But yeah,
The
so
wineries, you're still able to work in the winery and carry on doing production and moving the
yes,
wine around.
yes, yeah. But everything's a little slower because the bottling line, we have to clean everything every hour. And we what we're doing in terms of precautions is we're having different crews come at separate times, and they don't see each other.
Yeah.
So, one of my concerns is what will happen if, we have a case at the winery.
Yeah.
We don't want to have to shut down. So we have crews that never see each other. So that if one member is sick and everybody has to go home, another crew can come to work. And, what's amazing is our team, the people coming to work have just, been so committed. They're obsessed with us bottling these wines and selling them because Argentina is a much poorer country than UK, and we need to sell wine to be able to pay our taxes, and so that the hospitals can stay open, and so that we can pay salaries. I mean, everybody needs that. Of course, there is no country that's spared from this. There's hardship everywhere, but I believe that our people on the ground in the vineyard and the winery, it's almost like a patriotic mission to sell wine, because this is how we get to feed ourselves and our people.
In terms of the growers that you work with, have they all been able to get their grapes picked and organized?
Yes.
And all that,
Yes. Yes, everybody has been able to figure it out. I mean, there were some people who didn't show up for work the first day because they were fearful, but I think if the people that work at a winery are smart. If they see that you're taking care of them and you're worried and you're giving them masks and gloves and taking precautions, they're going to come to work. If they think you're not taking good care of them, they're not going to come to work.
Of course. And in terms of how that wine is then moving around the country and then for export, what's the situation in terms of actually moving it out of the country and into key markets?
So good question. So we did have some issues with customs in Buenos Aires at the beginning that people refused to come to work. But I think that the government, placed some good measures in terms of, social distancing and making sure that people were working in safe conditions. And now both customs through Chile, Mendoza going through Chile and Mendoza going out to Buenos Aires through the Atlantic are working very smoothly.
Okay, and then in terms of actually getting them into your key markets in Europe and America, and I suppose now with China opening up again, I guess that's helping in terms of the whole supply chain.
Yeah, so we are not currently having difficulty shipping wine. The issue right now is, some of our importers had very little stock, some had a lot of stock. The ones that had more stock are not ordering anything because they don't know what's going to happen to their business. And the ones that, UK, there's some strong sales in, Tesco, Waitrose, Majestic, all the retailers. So actually we are shipping wine to UK, and we're very excited about that because it's, we need to ship wine to be able to pay our bills. And
and how about in Argentina itself? I mean, I know the domestic market there is quite important, isn't it, as well? So how's it been in domestically?
Yeah, so half our sales are in Argentina, and the restaurants have closed down. So that's a big blow to us and to the restaurants, and all our friends. I'm sure you're having the same situation of all your friends in the restaurants. So what we did do is very early on, we partnered with several restaurants that we were working with very strongly before, and we actually helped them with their delivery services to do food and wine. And that's actually working really well. People in Argentina are ordering food with wine. The restaurants have been extremely dynamic. And, it's certainly not making up for the lost business.
Is that a new thing? People weren't doing that before, or
No. I mean, in Argentina, takeout is not common. There's, maybe for pizza or empanadas, but you don't have fine dining takeout the way you might have had it in Europe or in North America. So that is new, but it's taken off very quickly.
That's good. So in terms of how you see this developing over the coming weeks and months, I mean, what kind of feedback are you getting, or what are you hearing in terms of how you feel this might play out over? Are we looking at weeks, months? What's the sort of the scheduling here for the impact? I know it's hard to answer that question, really, but
well, I'm also thinking as a doctor. Remember, I am an ER doctor, and I've been through since the AIDS epidemic, that's when I first trained as a doctor, that was the main, epidemic we had. And I actually even acquired tuberculosis as a doctor because I acquired it in the hospital, and I have a little part of my lung missing. So I think that the current situation is the main concern is this overwhelming of hospitals. It's impossible to really completely prevent people from getting this disease. You can't close down for 2 years. The vaccine will take for sure another year, maybe a little more, if there is one. But I'm very hopeful about a vaccine, and I'm hopeful about treatments. Everybody in the world is working on this. So I think that within a year, hopefully vaccination will start, and then it will be a lot safer. And then it will be back to things as usual. But a year is a very long time. And, I do think that certain countries are going to start reopening. Argentina is going to start reopening in a couple of weeks, mostly because the economies can't withstand it. And so what my prediction is that there will be gradual reopening, but with a lot of precautions. People will be wearing masks, and it's kind of the smart thing to do. To me, the mask goes beyond protecting you from somebody coughing. It also makes you more conscientious because, you stay away from somebody that's wearing a mask. Whereas, actually right now I stay away from somebody that's not wearing a mask. But,
I guess so you, as a sort of a business, you're working with your partners and your customers, and you're sort of looking at long-term scenarios here. Because there are people who are kind of hopeful that in a couple of months we could all be back to normal again. But I guess you're looking at this and saying, no, we are going to be in this for a very long time, and we need to be prepared for that.
Yeah, and it could happen again. So we need to learn now. Maybe 10 years from now there's another one. And the one thing that I'm telling my team is this is not the time to go out and try to make new friends, in the sense of, let's find all the online retailers that we never worked with before and try and see if we can sell them something. To me, this is the time to look at the people that have been your partners, your supporters, and work with them. And so, if there's a customer that was a really good customer, and let's talk to them about what we can do. Let's say it's a restaurant. How can we help out? And then the online retailers we're working with are mostly ones that we were already working with before. And
do you think that going forward, a company like yourselves, that approach really, where I know people have always said for a long time that relationships really matter, but do you think this sort of crisis? Lots of wineries work with hundreds, but they work with many, many countries around the world. Do you see this as being a time when producers will actually be a lot more discerning, a lot more kind of tactical about who they're going to work with the right kind of partners in the right countries?
Well, for me, this has always been about partners and long-term relationships. And, our importers, they really are like family. Like Michael Saunders is like, for me, a cousin. Seriously, I've been him, I complain to him about family, and, we talk about, our kids going to school. And I think that these strong relationships are common in the world of wine. I think in other worlds also. I think in the restaurant business, there's so many family restaurants. And I think that in this hard moment, you're seeing even more of this because families also do hard things together. So we're having a lot of conversations with our importers where, we're asking them to do things that they've never done before. And what I find very interesting is the advantage that we have as an international winery, a winery that sells internationally. So I think that some wineries sell more locally, like a lot of wineries in the US. 95% of what they sell is in the US. So they only understand the US. One of the great things about selling in so many parts of the world is, for example, today I was talking to our German importer, and I was telling them what our importer is doing in the US, what our importer is doing in UK. And they were actually really excited to hear about all these ideas.
You can learn from each other.
Yeah, and you know, we did just get this award that I wrote to you about, the most admired brand, which you know, I have to say that it was kind of the right time to get it, although it's the wrong time, because
No,
you know, number one most admired wine in the world. I can't go around shouting about it because
yeah,
everybody's having such a hard time. You know, it's not the right time to say,
no,
"Oh, I did well,"
yeah,
but it did give this kind of extra strength to our team,
yeah,
because I said to them, I said, listen, we were just voted the most admired brand in the world, Catena, our little Catena from Argentina. We
mm,
now need to show that those people that voted for us did the right thing. We
yeah,
need to show the world that in this crisis, that, you know, we have the highest standards for ourselves, and that we are the best partner that anybody could have during this moment.
yeah, great. And you said that international aspect as well. I suppose as different countries come back on stream in different times, obviously China,
Yeah.
you know, other parts perhaps of Asia and the Asia Pacific will come back on stream quicker than Europe and obviously in America. I guess that puts you in a better position to be able to keep your sales going, keep the cash flow moving,
Yeah.
and keep the whole
Yeah.
operation going, I suppose.
Yeah, so it is good to have different stages in different
Yeah.
parts of the world, because you're right. We can, for example, we have somebody living in Shanghai,
Mm-hmm.
and he's French, and he considered for a little bit going to France, you know, when things were really bad in China, and his girlfriend is there in Shanghai, and I said to him, I said, listen, we're with you,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you decide. You
Yeah.
know, if you're scared of leaving your girlfriend because you won't be able to come back in
Yeah.
6 months and not see her, well, actually his fiance, I hope he doesn't mind that I'm telling his fiance. I said, you know, she's your fiance, you're practically married, so you need to make your best decision for your family. Because
Mm-hmm.
at that point we thought maybe it was better to go to France so he could do the rest of Asia, and he stayed, and it was the right decision, because now China is reopening and he's back to business.
Yeah.
So you know, that's one of the things that I found with this current crisis is you need to support your partners in the way they need it. You can't impose things on people. Everybody's going through a different situation, and you need to try to understand it. But and the main thing that I would recommend to other people is get on the phone, on Zoom, on Microsoft Teams, because this is not an email conversation. There's
No.
too much subtlety. There's too
Yeah.
much emotion,
Yeah. You see people.
and yeah, and you need to get on screen, you
Mm-hmm.
know, talk to people.
And also, well, I think what's interesting about the wine industry, because we are, you know, you mentioned before about going to Provine, and you know the thousands of people from all over the world who come to
Yeah.
Provine. You know, but you know, we are all going through this. So you know,
Yes.
next time we do go to Provine, we will all have had this very unique shared experience. If
Yeah.
that makes sense, which is a very strange time, but also a unique moment for us all to sort of like grow together, and
Yeah.
the new world that comes out of this will be fascinating to see. And as you say, the partnerships that you build and how you behave now will have a big impact further down the line, won't it?
Yes, yes, I agree. And I think that we will remember who behaved well and who
Exactly. Yeah.
behaved badly.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll still be the most admired wine brand in the years to come. So that's not going to change.
Well, no, but we have very high standards. That's what I told our team. I mean, I'll tell you, the one thing that is very hard in this moment is every country has different amount of help from their government.
Yeah.
And, you know, for example, you know, right now I'm in the US and people are complaining that, you know, some of them are not being able to get online and get their money, you know, which everybody needs their money. And then, but then, you know, the reality in countries like Mexico is, you know, the government is helping them very, very little. They can't even expect to get money ever.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah.
Yeah, and there's countries that are much poorer, and that to me is the most difficult thing. Is we have to adapt to each country, and we have to have empathy for everybody, because nobody is having a good time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, but the hardships are even more extreme in some places where you know the healthcare. I mean, in Peru they have less than 50 intensive care unit beds, or like 20.
Yeah.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a really dire situation. So that's what I find hard as a doctor, you know, thinking,
yeah,
I don't know, I worry so much about some parts of the world.
it does. I know, and I think it really kind of you know, brings it home to really the little problems that you may have in your own business lives
Yeah.
compared to what's going on around the world. Just
Yeah.
finally though, because you know, I know we're really all still in the middle of all this. I mean, what kind of lessons do you think you're already learning from this, and what the wine industry as a whole could potentially take from what we're all going through?
Well, for one is that I think online everything was already happening, and it's happening quicker. And the good thing about this is that hopefully people will travel less. You know, I have people sometimes saying, you know, Laura, we will only do this wine promotion, this whole thing for you if you come and do a tasting at my restaurant. And of course, I get on the plane, I fly overnight, I do the 12-hour flight and leave my children, everything. I mean, everybody has to leave their children to travel in this business. And sometimes I feel like, you know, maybe I could have had that meeting on Skype or on, you know, it wasn't necessary. And so I think that people are now realizing that they can have a pretty strong connection and a good connection without, you know, first of all, it's not just the inconvenience, because that I can do that. But it's think about all the carbon footprint of all those people flying. So I think that a lot of business is going to happen online, and that will be a very good development. I think the second thing that is going to be important is, you know, you need to be able to move quickly to do new things. And I am actually seeing it with my customers. You know, some customers, you know, within a week had already figured out how to do all these new things well. Other customers, you know, it took a lot longer. I think every business in the world will prioritize being able to change quickly. And that will be, you know, a good thing that will come out of this.
Yeah, and I think also, I suppose we have to also appreciate what are the end consumers going to want as well, because I mean, that whole connection online and people wanting to do more things online. Interestingly, one of the things I'm hearing from China is that a lot of consumers are actually really connecting with these online social sharing, be it virtual wine tastings, be it you know, you're hearing of travel agencies with the virtual holidays, you know, people going on virtual trips in the virtual machines and stuff. So it's I suppose we have to also appreciate the consumer is changing as well as business.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I mean, Instagram Live, I had never done one before, and now I've done, you know, I've done at least a dozen. But I think that there will be some of this online. I think, well, I have a son who's quite an introvert. And I sent him a joke from some newspaper about how, like, you know, all the computer geeks and the nerds, like, he plays a lot of video games. You know, they've been waiting for this day when they're the new normal, you know. And so I think that, you know, people who maybe don't like to socialize as much will, I don't know, they'll feel more normal, which they're normal. They're normal anyhow. You know, what is normal? But I think that human nature is connection, and you know, the you know, the in-person connection will stay, but yeah, a lot of it should be replaced by virtual connections because it's good for the environment.
Yeah,
it's what we need.
And you're in California, I'm in London, and it works fine. Thank you very much for your time today, and obviously wish you all the best. Wish all your team the best, and thank you very much indeed for being part of this.
Yes, thank you, Richard, and see you soon.